Mr. Kraus, I have 6:31, so I think when you're ready to go, we can begin the meeting.
Oh, sure.
Mrs. Dolan said that she can't talk again. She said she clicked the panelist one, but she doesn't have sound.
Mrs. Miller, could you send Mrs. Dolan the link again, please?
Yes, I can.
Could I just interject for a second? I don't mean to interrupt, but I had this, now that we have this different option of it being a webinar, I noticed when I try to do the computer volume, it's different, or the computer audio, I should say, it's different. So that might be what's hanging her up. You have to switch, I noticed, from phone call to computer audio, which I didn't used to see before. But anyway, I just thought I'd offer that. That's what messed me up last time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. So it is, as Dr. Bolton pointed out, a little after 6:30, so we're going to get started tonight. And as we get started, I'd just like to make a short announcement. This is a combined meeting, so there are some finance items on this agenda. So when we get to items 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, I will ask Mrs. Banis-Clemens to lead that discussion, to lead that portion of the meeting for those finance-related items. And as we go into our agenda tonight, first item up there is public comment, and no one has signed up for public comment as of 6 p.m. So we're going to move right into the presentation from Reynolds and SiteLogic. So gentlemen, I will hand it off to you, if that's okay. And Mr. Dalbert, if you have a piece of this as well.
Thanks, Mr. Kraus. We'll turn it over to Garrett and his team.
Mr. Lewis, we can see your screen.
Please unmute us.
Mr. Lewis, I saw posted a comment that he's muted.
Mr. Lewis, your audio is not coming on. Can't unmute you. Can you try a different audio option, sir? There you go.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being patient while we figured this out.
Guys, are we on? Is everyone hearing an echo, or is that just us?
You seem to be okay with us so far.
I think we were hearing an echo, but I think it's all right now.
If it's all right now, then we'll get started. I'll jump in just real quick, everybody. I apologize. I have another meeting that I have to jump out for that was competing with this one, but we do have our team here today: Jeff Harris, Melissa Kolstock, and Dan Madden, all folks that you've met before. And also we have Mark Karowski with us tonight here to talk about the site projects, the high school, middle school campus, as well as the elementary schools. So if we want to get into the presentation tonight, we really got two things that we want to cover. And who's controlling the slide? Melissa, you've got that. We're going to start with the circulation program, parking and site improvements at the high school, middle school. We're going to talk about the tennis court, just because there's a little bit of a decision that needs to be made here tonight as far as the timing and the schedule of the tennis court replacement, whether or not we want to size that up with the 2021 tennis season, or if we're going to include that as the rest of the project. We may need to pull that forward. And then we'll wrap reviewing our 2021 maintenance projects, which again came from the long-term facility maintenance plan that we did with you all throughout the year of 2019 and then through 2020 up until this point. So we'll present Those projects that are on the schedule for the 2021 maintenance program, keeping in mind that what we're looking for from you all tonight as it relates to maintenance projects is simply a head nod, that we can bring that scope of work back to you with the cost, just like we did last year. We'll bring each scope of work back like a menued list. You'll see the bid results and the performance for each project individually as well as by building. And then you'll make that final decision at that night once we bid those projects out. So all we're looking for from you tonight as it relates to the maintenance project is just some feedback on the overall budget and the scope of work. And we'll let Jeff Harris do a good job introducing you to the 2021 projects. But we're going to start with Mark Karowski tonight. So he'll take it away from now.
Great. Thanks, Garrett. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Thank you. So first, just wanted to update the group on progress. It's been a few months, I think, since we've all talked or we've been in front of this group. Big chunk of the work of the last few months has been the wetlands investigation, the subsurface utility investigation, and the detailed boundary and topographic survey for both the high school and middle school campus and the West Rock Hill Elementary School site. Those are both complete. What you see in front of you is the same conceptual site layout plan that we discussed last. It's just now rooted in an actual as-built survey. Nothing huge that came out of that. Only two things I would lift up. As you look on the far right of the screen behind the transportation center, we found two little areas of existing wetlands. You'll see one there, kind of Louisiana boot shaped. And then on the right side, there's one that kind of angles down to the right. Not insurmountable. We've already discussed how to modify the layout in that area to avoid those wetlands. We have a little bit of work to get around those. We will probably lose a few of the intended bus parking spaces there, but we think we can still get the facility that we want. It's just going to look a little bit different because we have to work around those areas. The other area I would note, kind of right in the middle of the screen where you see the green tennis courts, kind of the top right, oh, that helps, thank you. Bottom of the slide, it's a little tougher to see here, but you can kind of see the aerial image underneath. The courts do lay out pretty close to an existing, I think it's an athletic facility equipment area. We're going to work a little bit to see if we can adjust that layout to not have to impact that building. So we'll work with Kelly and his team on that. And then really the last item that came out of the survey in terms of any impacts to what we had proposed in the sketch, all the way top left, when we talk about an expansion to student parking, we are currently verifying that we can still provide a ninth grade appropriate soccer field and looking at the ability to provide band practice in that area. We think we can make them fit. Part of this will come out of our grading exercise, which is what we're doing right now. We may have to modify what we'll call kind of that upper tier of parking, either to lose a few of those spaces. If it's too impactful, we may have to lose that whole upper tier. If the desire is to keep, to make sure we have that full size regulation ninth grade caliber soccer field. We're still working through that. And again, it's a function of grading, but we should have an answer on that fairly soon. Otherwise, the survey really didn't turn up anything for us that gave us any heartburn. Those are things that we can readily accommodate as we now move into detailed design. What did we have next on high school site improvements? So if we could go to the next slide, and please, board members, jump in if I speak to anything you'd like to see specifically addressed. So you look in the bottom right of the slide, just kind of teeing everything up for the next steps. Now we're into detailed design and permitting process. So you'll see the very next step for us is significant grading exercise, making sure that we can get the topography is going to work, limiting the impacts of cut and fill, trying to avoid retaining walls. That takes us to stormwater management, which means we do some infiltration testing. Once we've established where are we going to provide that those stormwater management facilities. And then we move into traffic impact study. Obviously, we're in a little bit of a different situation right now in terms of the traffic counts that we would have. But based on our understanding of the school's current function and how the staggered schedule works, we think that we'll be okay to still take counts. We may to apply like a factor to those. We're working with our traffic guys right now to see what will PennDOT accept or require. The short version is we think we can still do the counts. We can still proceed with our analysis. And I'll kind of loop all the way back to earlier conversations. The focus of that effort is primarily circulation within campus and then circulation into and out of campus to try and improve that. Doesn't mean an additional drive or a driveway out onto North Fifth. That's all really kind of what that exercise is driving. It's not a function of we're adding a bunch of students, so now we've got to provide, you know, some kind of improvements that would be required by PennDOT. We'll evaluate that as well, because technically we're going to have some more drivers on campus because we're going to provide some additional parking for student drivers. But I don't know that that's going to rise to the level of creating any specific traffic improvements that would be required by PennDOT or the township. And then lastly, we talked with Dr. Bolton and Kelly and the team about now's probably a good time for us to evaluate the existing pavement condition. We had proposed to do that as part of the West Rock Hill project, which we will be doing. We hadn't dug in too deep on that for high school, middle school, but it only makes sense that when this project goes to construction and we've got pockets of work happening in different parts of the campus, we're going to have construction vehicles running through the site. There are, already areas that I understand have some concern as to the condition of that pavement. We're suggesting, and we'll come back with a program that says, okay, we're going to get our geotechnical guys out. They'll do a bunch of core borings basically to see, you know, what's the thickness of the pavement section? Do we have any problems with drainage underneath there? And from that, we can identify, maybe there's some areas where we just mill and overlay, or maybe there's some areas that there's a deeper problem and we want to actually remove whole areas of full depth paving. So that exercise, that happens kind of concurrent with all these other efforts. Paving specifically, we'll get to a point where we say, okay, here's what the analysis has said. Here's what we think that looks like. Then let's talk about what that means to you in terms of budget and timing. Maybe we tackle some of it with the rest of the project. Maybe that also wants to phase in depending on, hey, what are the highest priority areas, or, you know, from a cost or budget standpoint. So all that's happening on like parallel tracks. We're moving those all together. And as we move through those, then we're also working with the township. We're not there yet, but fairly soon, probably once we get through the grading and have a better idea on stormwater, we'll connect with the township because we want to sit down with them with kind of our conceptual sketch and grading and stormwater plan and lay out the project for them. Here's what we plan to do. Here's some questions that we have. And township, we would love your feedback on any of these items, concerns. You know, we'll walk through schedule with them because we really want to make sure that they understand the project, and any concerns that they have, we want to hear about them right out of the gate. When we get to that point, we will most definitely let Dr. Bolton and the team know, should there be, you know, a need or a desire for administration or board members to attend. Usually at a sketch plan stage, it's not necessary unless we think there's a contentious issue, but we'll certainly let the group know in case that's something that is of interest.
Mr. Karowski, I have a question really quick.
Yes,
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, so I'm looking at your permitting process, and I'm wondering if you've put into your timeline, which obviously there's lots of moving parts there, some delays. Now, I've been realizing a lot of delays with PennDOT. They're backed up from having been shut down. The NPDES, so the DEP was shut down from, COVID. So I'm wondering if you've anticipated that, and are you putting that into, consideration for your timeline?
Absolutely. So you're spot on. We've seen those delays in varying degrees, both from PennDOT and DEP. So yes, that's something that we factor in as best we can. I will say that generally, we've actually seen some quicker reviews from some of the folks who are working remotely, right? But then they may have a counterpart who's on the same project who's slower. So there is some push and pull. One of the ways that we try to help mitigate that is we schedule pre-application meetings with DEP and County Conservation District. If DEP even needs to be involved in the NPDES, they may not. And then secondly, certainly the township, but also if PennDOT's going to be involved, we will have a pre-application. They have a very regimented process. We try to get them involved early to at least let them know, here's our target, here's our window that we're trying to accomplish. They'll give us we'll do the best we can and our rules are our rules. But at least if we start with them, it helps them understand what we're trying to achieve. So you're spot on. That is certainly a reality of the COVID situation, but that's how we figure and how we have found to best manage that.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure that we were taking that into consideration when we were talking about your process and when to start. So thank you for answering that.
Certainly. And actually, that's an excellent segue to talk, if I could, and other board members, if you have questions, please jump in. But that goes to the tennis court replacement discussion that Garrett mentioned. So, right now, the tennis court is part of all the other improvements that we're showing on the high school, middle school campus. In talking with Dr. Bolton and the team and kind of the desired timeframes for having those new courts up and running, which I understand wants to be probably as soon as we can, but fall of 21 to be ready for fall sports. We need to be moving pretty quickly. Our suggestion and how we talked through this was to exactly the comments that were made about the schedule. The overall projects, because of the MPDS permit, because of the potential involvement with PennDOT, because of the traffic side of things, probably it has a longer window. Kind of try to subvert that and give us our best chance to get the tennis courts built in the time frame that the district would like. We've suggested pull them out, make the tennis court kind of its own standalone project. That would be probably avoids NPDES, most definitely avoids anything to do with traffic. The township process, we suspect, would just be a stormwater review. I don't think we'd have to go through a land development process. So we think that allows it to be a more concise, kind of defined project that we could move through more quickly. And we'll keep running the high school and the middle school overall project right over here in a parallel path, and we'll tell the township that. But that way, I think it gives us a better chance to be ready to bid the tennis court project early 21. Even if it bleeds into February, I hate to say March, but even March of 21, that's as late as I'd probably want to go. But that way we can be bidding, getting pricing, and having contractors teed up. So the moment we can get on those courts, whether that is after the season ends, whether there's a specific use, or if we're going to wait until school's done, we're ready. That work can be done in the summer of 21 to have us ready for fall. So a lot of information, but want to kind of lift that up. That's why you see that as kind of a separate bullet item here. We think that's that gives us the highest likelihood of success to make that in that time frame.
So does that add to the cost by separating that project out?
So in terms of the design fees, yes, it will add a little bit because we'll have a separate process with the township. We would have stormwater anyway. We'll have a separate bidding process and kind of probably a separate construction process. So there will be cost. We apologize, we do not have that for the board this evening, but we can work that up quickly. We wanted to get feedback and make sure it was something that the board was interested in. As far as construction cost, nominally, you're going to probably pay for mobilization, demobilization, general conditions because you've got a second contract. This is a pretty succinct contract. So yes, there's a delta. My suspicion is it's not that significant.
Okay, yeah, if you could get those numbers by next time, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Any other questions on the high school, middle school site?
No.
Okay. I think we can cycle on to West ROCKHILL. Actually, I should mention before we get into this one. So again, when you talk about the bidding and also the idea of bidding the tennis courts a little sooner, even for any of the work, I'm sure that Jeff and Dan and the SiteLogic folks can talk to this too, but we're kind of seeing what seems to be, the COVID impact. We're starting to get contractors calling us asking, hey, when's stuff bidding? They're getting hungry. I think, we may start to see some numbers that are better. If we can be telling guys that we're bidding a project in, January, February, March, they're going to get lined up. I think there is a real possibility of getting good value by bidding in that time frame. So something to keep in mind. On West ROCKHILL.
So it's interesting because we just did a project over at our tech school, a big renovation project, and we were actually kind of seeing the opposite effect because the numbers came back a lot higher than was originally expected. And we were actually told that that was the COVID effect, that we're seeing higher prices now because of COVID. And maybe it was just the timing that was literally right when things were switching from yellow to green. And so I don't know if it went up and now it's going back down as far as the costs are concerned. But I know that definitely was a negative impact on us at that point, and we needed that for classrooms at a set time. So it wasn't something that we could delay.
Spot on. I mean, and again, I'm getting a little out of my depth, so Jeff or Dan, grab me if I go astray. But generally speaking, I think you're going to see this curve. There was certainly a bubble because construction stopped for however long it was. All of a sudden, construction was go. Everybody was hurry up, get this done. A lot of folks tried to get work done quickly. Contractors were busy, push prices up. It feels like, and again, this is trying to take the pulse of the contractors we talked to, that looking out 6 months, different story, because they're not seeing as many things going out to bid in that window. So look, admittedly, it's a little bit of crystal ball, but kind of the what we're hearing from folks we're talking to are saying that seems like that could be the case. I don't think that would get worse. If anything else, I don't think it's going to get, I'm going to knock on wood when I say that. I don't think it'll get worse. But I do think that you have the.
But we're going to lock you into that. You know that, right?
Please don't put that in.
Hey, Mark, you're right. This is Dan Madden. How you doing? Just to answer the question, you'll see it later on in the presentation, so I'm stealing a little bit of Jeff's thunder. But as far as the LED lighting side of things, we saw a drastic difference of the pricing pre-COVID versus now in COVID. So you'll see that later, but I don't want to jump ahead too far, Jeff.
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Good question, Megan. That is spot on. So real quickly, West Rock Hill, kind of, again, same thing. Survey's done, wetlands delineation is done, subsurface utility investigation is done. We're moving into that same level of detailed design, a little more kind of succinct project. Really, the only thing that grabbed us out of the survey is, you can see in the drawing where our parking lot expansion kind of more or less parallels the property line at the bottom of the drawing. Gets pretty tight, gets a little tighter than we thought based off of the tax parcel information we were using. So that might have us kind of rotating everything just up a little bit to give us a little room. We may need to do some buffering, vegetative buffering along that parking lot. We may not, that's still to be determined. Otherwise, that one's kind of business as usual, same trajectory as high school, middle school. Detailed grading gets us into stormwater design and infiltration testing. Traffic impact study, because we are adding that second driveway out onto the main road. And also, and this I'll let, if I don't know if Melissa's in the group for Site Logic, but the multimodal transportation application, certainly we're going to be working with the Site Logic team on that. So again, we see those probably, we're trying to parallel, we're trying to move all these projects as quick as we reasonably can. West Rock Hill is going to definitely have all the processes: land development, stormwater management, MPDS permit. I believe we have traffic impact study on this one, but not PennDOT. We are not a PennDOT road at that site. That's kind of the lay of the land on West Rock Hill. Happy to answer any questions y'all may have. And I'm going to pull up Garrett Lewis, and I actually need to walk across the hall to another board meeting here as soon as we're done, but I'm available as long as you have any other questions or comments that I could answer for you. I think that the one takeaway that we were hoping to get was at least a sense from the board tonight on the tennis court as a separate project, high school, middle school. Fully understand you need to see some, the cost proposal from us for the design impact, for the fees. We can take a stab at what a construction cost impact would be there, because again, it's just really kind of general conditions and MOB demob. But I'm happy to get those for you. I just really wanted to take a temperature on, hey, we think that's a good idea as long as the number makes sense, or now we have no interest in that.
I think is a great idea, because if you just have to get township approvals, then that's much easier than linking it with the other project. So I personally feel it's a great idea. In consideration, however, of those other costs. So we do need to know what those are.
Absolutely. And I don't know when your next meeting would be, but I can commit to having that information for you actually this week.
I guess the other piece is there were certain parking aspects of this that don't impact our everyday needs at the school district where timing was an issue. And I know we had talked about before that timing those projects when it's most cost effective, when we're going to get the best deal, since it's not something that's going to impact learning or, because it's off to the side. So that would be, I guess, the only other piece of this is kind of looking at, and I know it's like you said, a crystal ball, but just trying to time these projects the best we can so that we get the best price for them. And then the other piece, I feel like some of these projects, although we could definitely use the extra parking. I think with the impacts of COVID on our budgeting too, I'd like to, at some point kind of see how that all shakes out with Mr. Dahlbert's budgeting to make sure that all of these numbers work and that we're in good shape, or, whether or not this is something that should be delayed a little bit. I think that's something that we have to figure out a little bit too.
Sure. And I think, so our intent was, we'd kind of all discussed the plan that we would push through the approval process would incorporate everything. But then to your point, it would be, okay, now let's talk about, let's prioritize the parking areas. Let's also look at like an earthwork, cut fill standpoint, from a stormwater management standpoint, what's the most cost-effective way to kind of parse that overall project into more succinct bid packages. That's something as we plow through the design and we get the design to a point, then we can sit down and we would sit down with the Site Logic team to say, hey, let's get the district's priorities on, hey, we really need the student parking first. Okay, sure, let's think through that. But the other aspects of the construction piece, I don't want to say, hey, phase one is this, and it leaves us with 10,000 yards of dirt extra. Well, that's not going to make sense. So that is part of how we push and pull and balance to give the district the best value in how you kind of break those projects up. And of course, time them with your budget, most certainly.
Yep. So, Mr. Korowski, I also support the idea of decoupling the tennis courts. I think it's a good idea. It's a nice way to simplify the application process and only have the township involved, hopefully. And as my colleagues have said, I think for these other projects, we need to see the cost impact, and whether it makes sense to parse them out or, do a piece here and a piece there. We leave that to you to come back with the estimates and see which way we want to go.
Certainly happy to do it. Okay.
Okay. Any other board members have comments?
I'm fine with the suggestion as well. That's all.
Okay.
Oh, looks good to me.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you all.
All right.
I'm certainly available after my next meeting for the Site Logic folks. If anything else comes up, just email me. I'll jump back on. And in the meantime, we'll get that information later this week on the breakout costs for the tennis courts.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time this evening, folks.
Thank you.
Okay. Talk soon. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Jeff Harris at Site Logic. I'd like to talk to you now about the 2021 maintenance projects. The team consisting of us, administration, facilities, took the information in the LTFM and we asked the district to go back and take another look at how they might like to see the 2021 work prioritized. This is the list that was returned to us. It's primarily replacing PA and intercom systems district-wide with a couple of extra pieces of work that we want to take a look at the high school campus. You can see there in the middle section regarding storefront doors and hardware and drains we need to add and some locker replacements at the green gym. But by and large, it's a PA and intercom system replacement district-wide. We also asked the facilities and administration team if they had any other issues that have come up since it's been February, March since we had asked them to look at prioritizations. And if you can show the next slide. They came up with a few additional items that what they would like us to price, which we will are going to work hard to get numbers for your next meeting. On the left, you'll see some, this was work that was identified in the LTFM at Bedminster that we need to price up related to capital improvements at the kitchen. And on the right are some new items at several of the buildings that we are going to price up and add to the prioritized list for potential 2020 work. Next slide, Melissa, please. We've also wanted to point out for the district that back in March, when we priced up district-wide lighting, pre-COVID pricing, we were at about $4,900,000 for the better option over the good option. Just to give a ceiling on what the district could potentially spend to replace lights with LED. We're seeing significant savings on the lighting world in our recent projects. And with a $214,000 a year savings, we think that we at least like the district to let us go back and hard price, reprice those numbers again from the vendors we asked to price it originally and validate what I'm telling you here about significant cost savings. I think if that proves to be the case, it's something that the district could consider to take advantage of what we're seeing in the marketplace for lighting replacements. I'd also encourage members of the committee and board members to take a look at the mock-ups that we did in rooms 353 and 355 at the high school. Room 353 is something that we would recommend is done only in classrooms. It's the better version of the two solutions we looked at. I think it's a good fit for classrooms, and the adjoining room 355 is the least cost expensive, where we just went in and just replaced lamps one for one with LEDs. And I think the hybrid combination of using the better solution in the classrooms and teaching spaces and the less expensive solution throughout the rest of the buildings district-wide are going to definitely see savings at or beyond that number of $650,000 I'm showing, but something to consider. Next slide, please. So all that being said, the district's looking at a potential with public bid site work listed at the top, totaling out right now at about $6.2 million. The items from the LTFM that were already priced, the 2021 maintenance items, they total $1.9 million. The LED down from 4.9 to 4.3. And like I said, we're going to push to improve that with the environment we're looking at right now. And the additional items that we were given, you're looking at an estimate right now. And again, we're going to come back to you with better pricing because we just received those new items recently. So we're working through pricing them, but we're estimating them right now to be around 2.75 million. So that's a DISA amendment potential of 8.9 and a total project spend of 15.2 million. So we are planning on, like I said, unless you tell us differently, the lighting, we're gonna get back to the lighting consultants that put together the pricing for us and have them take another hard look at that so we can validate the savings we think are there. Like I said, we're gonna price those maintenance items from our perspective from a scheduling standpoint. We can probably get to that lighting pretty quickly here this year still. The maintenance items are going to take several months to develop, and like we have said all along, and we'll do the same thing we did last year for the 2020 summer work. We will price by hard bid all of those maintenance items. They will turn from estimates into hard bids, and that's what we would come to you with for DISA amendment consideration in probably mid-January to early February of 2021. And if I'm open for questions at this time about pretty much anything we talked about so far.
Do these estimated prices reflect pre-COVID pricing, post-COVID pricing? Where are we at?
The only one that I'm saying is post-COVID is the lighting right now, because we've been talking to the people who are putting these prices together. We have not bid out the work for me to be able to tell you right now that they're, in my opinion, we priced them the way we would have in March. So I would consider them pre-COVID, but like you had pointed out before, until you actually put these jobs on the street, you don't know for sure, but I have a higher confidence level with the LED piece than I do with the other pieces because we haven't hard bid them yet.
Okay, and on that LED piece, that's, as I recall, that is not an all or nothing deal. That is something that we can do almost like cafeteria style with individual buildings or.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is not an all-in deal at all. You can do that phased over a couple of years. You could do it pieces of the building at a time, any number of ways.
Okay.
Given the environment, however, it may make sense to do all at once.
Yeah, the more you get economies of scale, the more you do, but it's not, you're not locked in.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions, board members?
Looks good to me.
Okay. All right.
That's our last slide. If anyone has any other questions, otherwise we're done. And thank you very much for the time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Board members, any last comments before we move on with the agenda? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate you putting together the detailed plans and the analysis. And we look forward to some updates on the pricing and, things we talked about tonight. All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Moving forward with the agenda, the Reynolds Civil Engineering Services Agreement.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus, can you hold on a second before we go to that? We have two other items on the first Reynolds number 2 there. So we have
Okay.
2B and 2C, which are two multimodal resolutions that Reynolds has asked us to put forward to the board for approval this month. And they're basically, those resolutions are the board's official support of requesting a multimodal grant and from the state for both the Department of Transportation and the Department of Economic Development. The only thing that we are waiting for yet on those two resolutions is the cost information, which is being, the folks we were just speaking with are developing those to get those costs to us. So.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have those to you shortly to be able to insert into your resolution.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
I didn't know you were still there.
Do you think we'll have them in time for the board meeting?
Yes, we'll make it a point to have it in
Okay.
time for those board meetings.
Okay.
Great. Great. So
Thank
those
you.
two resolutions are there for your review, Mr. Kraus. And we'll get those numbers filled in when Melissa gets them to us, and we'll have them on the agenda for next Monday.
Okay. Perfect, Mr. Dahlberg. Thank you. I had missed them in the agenda, so my
No problem.
apologies.
No problem. There's a lot there.
I had already clicked into the next item. Okay, Mr. Dahlberg, do you want to speak to the civil engineering agreement?
Yeah, so the
Or-
next item is the single civil engineering contract document. This is the document that finalizes the board motion back, I believe it was in April, where the board approved the civil engineering work to be done. So this document came from Reynolds and has been thoroughly reviewed, and a number of changes made by our counsel. And our counsel, Mr. Miller, has put his final blessing on this agreement, and basically is okay for the board to go ahead and pass that, and you sign that.
Okay. All right. Any questions, board members, on that item? All right. Thank you, Mr. Dahlberg. And the next item we have is a request from the Bucks County Industrial Development Authority to renew the LRTA for the Sellersville Business Campus. Mr. Dalbert, do you have anything to add to this?
Actually, Mr. Kraus
Yes.
is here tonight. Mr.
Ah.
Peter Kraus is here, and he's going to talk to this item. So.
Okay. Well, welcome, Mr. Kraus.
Thank you. I'm the executive director of the Bucks County Industrial Development Authority. It's a county directed agency, and it has a lot of responsibilities with regard to development of various parcels around the county, as well as financing certain kinds of tax-free and other items which are not germane to tonight's meeting. And I see you've got a really lengthy agenda, so I won't take up a lot of your time. I sent a letter to the board on August 24th. I hope you all have a copy of it, which laid out the reasons why we were asking for an extension, the 5-year extension of the LRTA. The 5-year 100% LRTA was recommended by the municipality in which it's located, which is Sellersville. The site itself is an environmentally, it was a brownfield, it was more than a brownfield. The Amitech, the previous owner, had to spend a great deal of money cleaning it up, but they didn't prepare it for development. It probably would have gone vacant for a very long time. There are very few developers who are interested in this kind of a site. It has a pump and treat system for groundwater, which will have to last in perpetuity, guaranteed by Amitech. So the county, along with the state, invested about $3.2 million in this site to improve it for sale to developers. We've developed the first of 2 of 6 lots. The first owner being Solersville, the Solar, which if any of you have been at the site, is a modern facility where they treat all kinds of metal for a variety of uses. The county's administrator is with me this evening. Margie McKevitt, if you want to say a few words about this as well.
I will, if you don't mind, I'll move over here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. We have participated in this project with the Industrial Development Authority going back to 2013. As Pete said, the county has a significant investment in this project through the Industrial Development Authority. And I believe you should also have a letter from our chair, Commissioner Marseglia, in support of the project and of the LRTA. If you all pass this LRTA this evening, the county commissioners will consider it on their next agenda, but they are very supportive of this project. So if I just wanted to relay that to all of you. And thank you for having us tonight.
Yes, thank you. And the Borough of Sellersville has already approved a resolution on this project, and that is also, I think, in the packet that we sent to Mr. Dalbert.
Yes.
So I'm open to any questions you may have.
Did you say you're opening up to questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. So would you be able to speak to some of the ways that you've been trying to get people to lease that space? Because I support the idea of LRTA, but I would like to see that there's going to be some movement there, that there's an aggressive effort to get at least.
We have Nick Adams, who is a broker with Jackson Cross, we have a sole broker on that site. We've offered him an incentive, which brokers ordinarily don't get, which is a larger fee to move the site. I think you have to remember that because it has a pump and treat system, it is not as though it were a green field. There are a lot of companies which will be reluctant to go there. You're going to have to need a certain kind of company with a certain kind of executive who's willing to, although it's clean in the minds of some people, it isn't as clean as as a green field. So in terms of other sites in the area, it's harder to market. And that's why it's taken us this much time. We do think that, though, with the first developer there, the first development there, the 2 of the 4 parcels, it will increase in speed, hopefully dramatically. We have one offer on an additional parcel that we're working with, and we have a second offer on another parcel. So this LERD is central to getting those agreements signed.
I'm looking at the bottom of the documents and I'm seeing that there are 5 total lots. Is that correct?
There's 6.
There are 6 total lots. Okay, so what
6
I'm looking at shows, okay, that 2 are sold.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And so you're requesting a LERTA for the remaining?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I understand it, this is a renewed 5-year LERTA
Right.
on the remaining 4 properties, Dr.
Yes.
Thompson. So,
That's correct.
okay.
So
So,
if you rent out, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize yours.
no, I wanted to follow on to Mrs. Cullen's question. So you've offered the broker some incentive to market this site a little more aggressively.
Mhm.
Are you getting any feedback as to, other than it being brownfield, as to what the reluctance is, or is that totally what's
Well, it's
slowing down companies, that it's brownfield?
It's also not on a major highway. So it's in the middle of the borough, which reduces its attractiveness to some people. And we've all been very selective in who we're choosing, because in working with the town, there's some things and some uses that they don't want to encourage. So although it's zoned industrial, there are some industrial uses we've pledged the town that we're not going to encourage.
Okay. All right. Understood. Thank you.
Can you possibly elaborate on that?
Well, if you look at an industrial zoning, you can have everything up to an arbitrage. So there are some uses which would include large amounts of trucking that we've said we wouldn't encourage. There are uses which would have large amounts of outdoor parking for large trucks for different uses, which we've also discouraged. So we're looking for clean, sort of high-tech, modern uses at that site.
Thank you.
So is this property, is it just like clear and flat and like ready to be built upon?
No, so it was a moonscape before we acquired it. We cleared, there was 5 acres of concrete 6 inches thick, which had to be removed. We have created these 6 lots and they are fully served. They have water, electric, internet. They're plug and play lots.
So what makes them now like LERTA eligible if they're already clean and you already haven't been paying the taxes on them?
What makes them, I don't know exactly what you're saying. Why?
Well, if they're like from my understanding, what LERTA is it's supposed to take the tax burden off and like for a building that is, not in great repair for them to fix. Excuse me. So, oh my goodness. So now that they're clear and they're ready to be built, why would they still be eligible for LERTA?
Well, first of all, it costs us a lot of money to do that, so it's going to cost them more per acre for the sites. And secondly, it's to encourage users. As I said early on, not everybody wants to be in a site that is a former federal RCRA site. And so there are a lot of other places where people can invest. And when we acquired the site and repaired it, we said to the borough that we would do our best to make sure that it would be a fully developed site with all 6 acres, all 6 lots utilized. So that's what the LERTA is for.
I think where it's tucked way back there, people are aware of the history of those lots. And I'm sure the pump and treat systems has disadvantages, but of course those disadvantages wouldn't be problematic for the types of businesses that you wouldn't want in there anyway. So I think this, in my opinion, it makes sense. It just makes sense to be requesting this.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, ballpark number, how many companies have you turned away where they could have possibly been rented?
About 2 or 3. One, for example, was a skating, inline skating rink that was looking for a home that would have meant night activity, an activity that the borough didn't want. That's one that comes quickly to mind. And truck repair, there was a truck repair facility that we also turned down.
Just for the board's knowledge, it is a light industrial parcel or parcels. It is tucked into the borough's backside of the property. It really doesn't have, it's not built for major truck traffic. So it is built for small and medium-sized manufacturing companies, looking anywhere between 5, 10, 15,000 square feet. We're looking at smaller companies that are looking for numerous tax advantages to locate in the area. It is a brownfield site. It's never going to lose that distinction as a brownfield site. So it becomes a perfect candidate to reinitiate the litter program. So I think it's a good project for the borough, for the township, and the school district and the county.
I think that's Mr. Cormack. Thank you, Bob.
Yes. Yes.
I'm going to just to say, I'm a little aware of this particular property and its history and its hurdles. So I feel personally that you kind of need this LRTA in order for development. Am I correct?
I believe you are, yes.
Okay. And I mean, I'm just going to say it outright. I just feel that it's an odd location. It's got a lot of history, serious remediation, and it is, as you say, not a greenfield. So pump and treat is going to limit the type of industry that can go on those parcels. So I wanted the board members to keep that in mind. Yep. It is always good when you can take environmentally tainted properties and make them usable and workable and safe and make them valuable to the community again. So I just wanted to, interject that and have you consider that.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And I agree that it is a good site and it certainly qualifies under LRTA. I want other board members to be aware, as I understand the program also, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is a 5-year extension. So in year 4, if a property is sold, that will grant the purchaser 5 years of 100% tax abatement.
Right.
So this could run out 10 years in theory. So just so that everybody's aware of what we're considering here.
And it's on the improvements. It's on
Is
the
that correct,
building.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes, and it's as
Yes.
Margie said,
Yes.
it's on the improvements, not the ground itself. The ground itself, we continue to pay taxes, and so would any buyer. The school district loses no money.
Right. Understood.
So first of all, I want to go on the record as saying that I would have loved to have a roller skating rink there. I'm just saying. That would have been great. So I think you should have approved that one. But
does that fall under light industrial? Just one.
Yeah, it does. And we actually thought it was a pretty good idea too. But the borough, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of different players here and a lot of different feelings. And so that was one that they didn't want.
So does the borough have a
part on its own, I think.
So it's a zoning thing. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay, so my only concern, I think this is a property that clearly qualifies for LERTA, why we have LERTA. My only concern, and some board members have already kind of gone there, is we've had LERTA in place for 5 years. The economy was doing well. The economy is not doing well now. And so I'm just concerned that we're just going to be extending it another 5 years. And what can we do to make sure we're actually getting the properties in there? I know you said that you're hoping that they'll market it better. But it seems to me that you've already got the mitigation measures in place for them to be keeping the land clean, and that responsibility isn't falling on the company. And it doesn't seem like it would have a direct impact. So it doesn't seem to me like an industry should be shying away from this property just because of that. So that's the part that I'm struggling with a little bit.
Right. Well, as Bob said, the profile of the buyer who's going to buy a site like this is an independent operator. It's not a corporation. Generally, it's going to be an individual who owns a business and wants to own a building as well. And they're a particular kind of beast, and they have their advantages and disadvantages. And the site has to appeal to them as individuals. And I wish if I could figure out a way to unload it quicker, I would. As I said, we do have prospects right now that are looking at this site. If it goes in 5 years, you haven't lost anything. Hopefully we won't have to come back. I'm, pretty determined to get this thing developed. I should point out that one of the reasons is it took us almost 3 to 4 years to get this site cleaned up and prepared. And some of that was during when we had the LERTA. So there's between the EPA, the DEP, Department of Commerce, and transportation and others, it takes, well, you're familiar with the time frame for these kinds of things. So three of those 5 years were taken up with NPDES permits and environmental permits, and where each water retention basin would be. I don't want to get into the details, but there's a lot of that work that has now been done.
And do you feel like it's necessary for it to be 100% for all 5 years?
That's what the town wanted. So that's what we agreed to, and that's what they approved, and that's what I think the county would approve. And
Right, and again, we're not losing anything. And this
No.
is already tied into county and the borough. So
Right.
I think 100% makes sense. It does incentivize your sales.
Right.
too.
It moves it up faster.
Can I interject? I was just going to ask, I'm in favor of it. I'm just curious how much you're going to continue to market and how aggressive you're going to be marketing in the rest of the year, maybe some other incentives.
This is the first time the Industrial Development Authority has ever owned a site. We did it based upon the fact that we didn't think anyone was going to develop this site. And it was, an eyesore in the heart of Sellersville. So it's the only site we have, and we are aggressively marketing it. Again, as I said, it's sort of like you have to find the right buyer at the right time who's looking for that kind of site, market is nearby, whose workers are also nearby. There are you've got to get a lot of arrows through these swinging donuts before you can find a buyer. That's why it takes so long.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, board members, for Mr. Kraus? No. Okay, hearing none. Are we okay moving this forward to the agenda?
Yes, I'm totally supporting it.
I'm on board.
Anybody have any issues? Dave, you're good. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? We're good moving it to the agenda? Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
I know
you.
you're very busy.
Great.
I know we took up some of your night, so thank you very much for that.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kraus.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Testing lead in drinking water. Mr. Harper, are you still here?
I am here. So I guess we have the challenge. Can we share the screen so I can explain the results? It's part of the board doc. So if we could share it, that would be great. Let's see. I think I can do that. Can you see this document?
Yes, we can. At least
Great.
I can.
So this is the final update. Last month I talked
Mr.
about.
Harper, can you possibly blow up or increase your font? I mean, hit your arrow up?
He's good.
Thank you.
How about that?
Thank you.
Okay, so this is the update from last month. This is the final update, and I'll just run through this quickly. So this is our annual requirement for PDE. It's Act 39. So every year we either need to do lead water testing in all of our schools, or we need to talk about the health effects and possible issues that lead could cause in the schools. So what we've done for the past 2 years is decided to do some representative sampling. So we pick 5 different locations at every school, and that's what you'll see here, and you'll see the results. So the first column is the list of schools. It's all the elementary schools. Next column is a sample location at the schools, the actual test date, and then the results. And let's just go through there, and what you'll see, I'll scroll down so you can see all the information. I'll get to the bottom. So working from the bottom up, the test results were all pass at all of these, and pass means less than 15 parts per billion in the sample collected. So when we get to the top of this list, you'll see 4 failed test results, which meant they were over 15 parts per billion. And at that point, we look at the source and decide, is it a potential faucet, a valve, or something like that that's potentially contaminated with lead? So what we did, we replaced 3 faucets and 1 water fountain. That's what WF stands for. And replacing them, we did a follow-up sampling on August 4th, got those results back, and they were all passed, less than 15 parts per billion. So that satisfied our annual testing requirements. Part of that, when you ever have a over 15 parts per billion, you need to notify PDE of those results. I did submit that report to them. That goes on a list on their website, so it's public knowledge. And of course, sharing that information now is also public knowledge. So what we did, we found 4 that failed. We did a remediation, retested, and now they're all good. So thinking through this, the next few years, we're going to continue to do 5 sample locations per school until we've tested every drinking source. And the reason we chose 5 2 years ago, it just becomes pretty expensive to try to do every drinking source per school. So we decided to do 5 representative samples and continue that process till we're finished. Any questions?
Are you seeing any consistency in in the faucets that you're needing to replace based on the age and model? Is it something where you could, instead of the next batch that you're going to have to test certain ones, like is there a pattern where you can say, well, this one's going to fail, and to just start replacing things like that without having to test them first?
Yes, great question. So we did that. So when we saw the ones that failed, we said, all right, normally a school's built with all the same type faucets, and any that were of similar type size, we're planning to get them replaced. But honestly, it was pretty limited. When I asked the facility manager at the buildings at Bedminster, Dibler, and Sellersville, they said that there weren't any other faucets. There may have been one at Sellersville that we replaced as well, but last year's testing showed no high results. So feel pretty good about that.
Okay. Mr. Harper, at 5 locations per building per year, what does the cycle look like? Is it a 5-year cycle, 6-year cycle?
Good
question. What does the cycle?
So in elementary schools, if you think about those, every elementary school, for the most part, has a sink, has a bubble or drinking source. So in elementary schools, I think that might take a 5-year rotation in order to get them all. Other schools, there's not as many drinking sources. Like at Dibler, there was a water fountain. And we look to do those high consumption areas that where the kids drink from the most. We thought cafeterias, gymnasiums, those sort of areas. So that was really round one. We eliminated almost all of those, and we're just continuing to go around. So things like a sink in a restroom, we don't really consider that drinking water. Not that someone couldn't, but that's not a typical drinking source.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Harper? No? All right. You get off easy there, Mr. Harper. So thank you so much for this this report and your efforts to you and your team, the efforts to replace those drinking sources or fountains that had high levels of lead. So thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so we're moving into the bid pricing for the buses. Who's going to present this? Ta-da, nobody's taking it, huh? Mr. Daubert, you're on. Do I still have
I
this?
lost my unmute button.
There you go.
Sorry. So sorry. Okay, let's try this again. Can you see the bus bids? I shared it.
Hold on, they're coming back up. Yep, they're up.
Okay, great. Okay, so if you guys remember back when we did the budget, we reduced the amount of money for buses considerably this year because of the the budget issues with COVID and the impact to the economy and everything. And then we decided that we would just bid only what we absolutely needed, which was one wheelchair bus, 48 passenger wheelchair bus was the one bus that we absolutely needed to get replaced this year. So we put that bus out to bid, and we received 3 bids, one from Brightville, one from Roar, and one from Wolfington. And what I have for you tonight are the results of those bids. And you will see that the highlighted in yellow price is the highest bid. And we usually don't do that, but there's a specific reason for that in this case. The lowest bid from Brightville, that bid came in, and unfortunately that company did not follow the specs in a number of different places. They bid the incorrect wheelbase, which makes the bus body shorter, which reduces the space between the seats for the kids. So that was a major problem with that bus. They also included a 7-year warranty on the bus, and our specifications called for a 10-year warranty. They also had the rear dome lighting did not work independently from the front interior dome lighting. They're to work separately. I'm sorry, they're to work independently, and these did not. So there were 3 major areas that bus failed meeting the specifications, which are, and really the wheelbase issue was the real clincher that regarding the interior size of that bus. The second bus, the Roar bus, 108,935, is just under the Wolfington bus at $109,066. The problem with the Roar bus, if you remember that last year, we had a wheelchair bus that had a light inside the stairwell that corroded and caught on fire and it was at Central Middle School before they picked up the kids. And the bus driver and the aide had to use the fire extinguisher to put out that fire. And what was determined was that the light that was in that stairwell was made, and the back of that light corroded, and that corrosion is what caused the water to get in and short it out and cause a fire. So what we had to do, the district did, was we took every one of those buses that we had, and we replaced those lights with LED lights in our fleet of those style buses. And each one of those LED lights cost us about $300 last year to replace. we were specific in our bid that we wanted those lights to be LED, and that bid that came in from Roar is not LED lights. They're the old style lights which caused us the problem. Again, the back was metal and it rusted out. So the difference between this bid is actually less than what it would cost to get. If we took the lower bid and brought that bus in, we would spend $300 to interchange that light, because we will do it right away, because we don't feel that it's safe, which will actually put the cost above the Wolfington bus. So long story short, the Wolfington bus is the only bus that truly met the specifications that we put out to market. And so that's why we're recommending that bus.
Okay, questions from board members? Anybody for this? Okay, are we all right moving this bid forward? Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Dahlbert.
Thank you.
Next item up is obsolete items for review, and I'll toss it back to you, Mr. Dahlbert.
Okay, let's see here. Obsolete items. The first item is out of the district administration office. It's a chair. The arms are all torn up on that one, and it just needs to go to the trash. So we'll be disposing of that chair. At the high school, we have our library weeding log that will go to public surplus. And we have some chairs there that will go to the trash, because they're in pretty bad shape, they said. Let's see, and that's it for public surplus this month. Not too much.
Okay, everybody all right moving those items forward to the board agenda? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Dahlbert.
Sure.
And next up is the update on the tax rebate program. I'm going to throw it over to Mrs. Bain. Mr. Dahlbert, I think you're up again anyway, so.
Yes, sir, thank you. I'm going to try to share again here. Let's see.
Mrs. Baines Clemens, are you still on the line? I don't see your screen updating.
She is, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, can you see the tax rebate program up? All right, great, thank you. All right, so this one is a pretty short slide deck here, just 3 slides, which is a record, I think, for me. So I just wanted to give you an update on where we're at this summer on this tax rebate program. It has been busy beyond any of our imaginations. We've received 180 rebate applications as of September 9th. We review the applications, look for the needed information, look for proof of receipts of the state rebate, look for the state PA form that verifies the information. So there's a number of different documents that need to come in. We had to send 51 of the applications back for further information. 21 of those have come back to us and have since been processed. There's still 30 of those out there that remain outstanding, and Jackie will reach back out to those individuals to see if they need, what the holdup is. Sometimes they just haven't gotten their proof documents yet. So we processed 150 applications that have actually been paid or are waiting for payment as of September 9th. And we have, I shouldn't say we, I should say Jackie Schuler has fielded over 250 calls since the tax bills went out, just answering questions on this program. She has put a tremendous amount of time into it and has been very helpful to our taxpayers. So I give her a ton of credit for this the work that she's done in this program. This slide just gives you a little bit of idea of, we've kind of broken it up into batches. We got our first two batches actually over to accounts payable, 26 rebates and 27 rebates on August 6th. So we started paying rebates on August 6th. We've done 5 batch payments so far. You can see how many rebates were in each batch. We're working on our 6th one. And as of September 9th, we had 8 that we had approved and sitting ready to be paid. But all in total, of 150 that we've paid. Total we've paid out so far is just over $12,000, and the average is $81.25. And then you can see there what category that the ones that we've paid have fallen into. The majority of them have fallen into the $62.50 category of their rebates. So, is there any questions on where we're at so far with that program? It will run the entire fiscal year. Our taxpayers have the entire fiscal year to submit. We've talked to, or Jackie's talked to, a number of people who call and ask about our program and don't realize that they have to actually apply for the state program. They actually didn't know the state program was there. So those folks are applying for the state program, and then we'll circle back and apply for our program. So we feel we're helping some folks that way, just to get some knowledge out there to our taxpayers about the state programs. Some of those folks qualify. And of course, we do get some folks that just, they make too much money. They don't qualify for the state program or our program. So, but they call and ask, and Jackie's very polite too, very nice. But it's so that's where we're at. And
Thank you for the update. It's good to see that the community has taken advantage of the program, and it's really good. So pleased to see that.
Great. Yeah, we put the letter in with the tax bills. That was definitely a great move. But we've learned that we want to change that letter for next year. There's a number of different points that information we want to put on that letter compared to what we had on this year, to make it a little more clear and so forth. And we will also think that we would like to double side that letter next year and actually put the claim form on the back of that letter, because we have found that many people that Jackie has talked to do not have computers in their home. And do not have, not a computer and not the ability to print a claim form out. So we have spent a lot of time mailing claim forms out, which is fine. So those little twists for next year that we're thinking will help speed things up. And always the second year is always easier than the first. So we're looking forward to making those changes next year.
Okay, Mrs. Baines-Clemens, I'll let you jump in.
That sounds great. I'm glad that, with the 150, what is it, 150, how many questions did you say you fielded? I thought it was on there somewhere.
Jackie's talked to well over 250 taxpayers.
250, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're getting some insight then on some of the questions, so that way you can try to answer those questions in the form next time. So that way it lowers the number of calls you get, hopefully by next year. But I thought it was great to hear that the seniors who didn't know about the state program now, as a bonus, get to find out that, hey, you can also apply for this as well. So that's great.
Yeah. And we use the state representatives' offices a lot. We get, when they start asking about the state program, we refer them there so that those folks there can help them get filed with the state. And those folks at the state reps offices help them get their proof that they received their payment. Sometimes they don't have proof. Get them a copy of their PA form. They'll help them do that. So those folks in the state reps offices have been very helpful in with our folks also. So.
Okay. Do we want to move forward with the agenda? Everybody good? Okay. Mrs. Banis Clements, do you want to pick up item 10 there?
Could we do number 9 first?
Right, I was gonna say we have year
Oh,
end.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, year end.
No
I'm
problem.
sorry.
No
I'm
problem.
rushing things along. No
All
wonder
right.
Mrs. Banis Clements looking at me like I have 3 heads.
All right, I share my screen again and you should see the fiscal update. All right, great.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of where we're at the end of 1920 on a couple of our different funds. With the preference that we are in the middle of the audit. We just finished our 2 weeks of field work for the audit. The auditors were here the last 2 weeks. That's going very well so far, and there will always be some adjustments that they give us to make. So just know that these numbers aren't exact yet, and when the auditors are done with all their work, then we will have the exact numbers. But want to show you what the revenue summary looks like, revenue and expense summary looks like for 1920. Of course, we started with a balanced budget of 141.5 million. Our actual revenues as of September 8th were 141.3 million. Our total expenditures, actual expenditures, are 139.8 million, with a balance to the positive of about just under 1.5 million. Now, the revenues did not come in as high as we normally would. We're about 145,000 short of budget. We are generally 1 to 2% above budget on our revenues. So we were definitely impacted in the last 4 months of the fiscal year. The total expenditures came in again at 1.6 million under, which is 1.16%, which is in that area that we like to see our expenditures and revenues come in that 1 to 2% range. So expenditures ended up pretty good, and our shortfall is on our revenue side. And if you remember back in our June board meeting, what we did was we said that any unused funds at the end of 1920, we'll reserve those as a fund balance to support any deficit we have in 2021 due to the decrease in revenue because of the COVID, the impacts of the COVID-19, the job loss, interest rates, earned income tax, and all those items. So we will have just around $1.5 million to put aside and have that as a cushion to see what happens in 2021. And then if we don't end up using that, the board can just simply say we would now like to move that money to our capital projects fund like we would normally do, and we will use those funds then to keep our capital projects moving. So the next slide is the summary of the local revenue. And if you remember back in I guess it was April when we started to look at local revenues, we had highlighted 4 local revenue sources that we felt would be impacted the most by the COVID-19 and the loss of jobs and so forth. The first was earned income tax. Our budget was about 16.6 million. Right before the month before the COVID hit, I had projected, based on how we were doing so far in the year, that we would end up about 17.3 million on that line item. Where we ended up was at 16.8 million. So we were about $500,000 short of where I thought we would end up. Real estate transfer tax, $1.5 million budget. I had thought we would be at about 1.8 before the impacts hit, and we ended up about 1.7 million. So there we were short about 110,000. Delinquent real estate taxes, another one that we were really worried about. We budgeted 1.4. We thought we would be just over $1 million at that point in time, and we ended up at 911,000. Again, another 130,000 less than what we thought we would be for the end of the year. Another big hit we took was on the interest. We had budgeted 1.8 million. Rates were down a little bit, so our projection at March, we would end up about 1.7 million, 1.718. And we were definitely on line to hit that until the interest rates went away on us. And where we ended up was 1,250,000, which again is about $500,000 short of where we thought we were going to be. So when you put all those together, it's well over $1 million or over $1 million of revenue that before the pandemic hit, we were pretty sure we would get based on our numbers and our trajectory for the year that just went away. And again, that $1.2 million, that's what the difference is between where we ended up in revenue and where we would like to have been, which was 1 to 2% above budget. So those 4 line items definitely held true. Those were the 4 that we were very worried about. And again, we continue to worry about those line items going into the current year as well. The next.
I just want to say your projections seem to be much better than everyone else's projections. You're pretty good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But the saying, I think, is a blind nut gets a squirrel, or no, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, Megan. That's me. Every once in a while, I get lucky. So the next fund I want to show you, and I know we expressed a lot of worry about this fund back when the COVID, when we shut down school, was the food service fund, because again, we had to continue to pay all those folks out of the food service fund. And of course, we had no revenue at all from March on, except for the revenue that we were getting from the state and federal government for the meals that we were providing to our families through the shutdown and over the summertime. So that was really the only revenue we were seeing. And, those meals were very, very few compared to what we would normally do in that time period. So total revenue, and again, I'll preface this, these are unaudited numbers. There will be some adjustments here also. But if you can see in 18-19, from an operating standpoint, we ended up a positive 73,000 in the food service fund. But in 19-20, it looks like we're going to be about a $300,000 loss in that fund. That's a pretty substantial hit to that fund. But what worries me even more is what is going to happen to that fund in 2021, as we are feeding many times in the high school less than half of our students on any given day, based on the number of kids that are in hybrid and the number of kids that are out in virtual. And we also have that impact at the middle schools and the elementary schools with the kids that are in virtual and hybrid that just aren't there and available to feed. So I have concerns about the food service fund moving forward, and the impact on the 19-20 year. You can see there's about $300,000 loss. So I think we maybe spoke about this before. The board could consider supporting some of that loss or all of that loss in the 19-20 fiscal year by making a transfer over to that fund, and that also could occur, might be needed next year also. We'll have to wait and see, but it's just a very big impact on such a small fund to have that type of a loss in it. So it's something the board can think about. We can talk about it, and we don't have to know now, but it certainly is something I would put out there in front of the board to see what your thoughts are about that.
Mr. Dalbert, can
Yes,
I
sir.
ask you a question? You
Yeah.
had said that we could consider that. Are there other options for us? Can nutritional services operate at a loss? I don't think that's possible.
So nutritional services, it can operate on a loss, but The nutritional services works, the accounting for it works more like a business. So its net operating position right now is actually in a negative. But the reason it's in a negative is because of the paper entries for the liability for the ongoing PSERs, which the district also sees those liabilities on our fund, our governmental wide accounting statements, but not in our general fund statement. That's why actually our general fund statement looks like we have which shows that we have fund balances, and it does not take those liabilities into account. Whereas in the nutritional services program, those liabilities are in the financial statements, and what those liabilities make it look like is that the program's at a loss. So what I do is I look at the cash balance of the food service fund to really have to tell us a lot better about where it is. That fund has about $1 million of cash, operating cash. So if the whole 301,000 loss hit that fund this year, it would take 30% of the operating ability or operating cash away from the fund. So that's to me, that's a pretty big impact. And if that happens again in 2021, in 2 years, it could lose over half of its operating cash. So can it be left alone? Do you have to do anything? No, you don't. It could be left alone, but if it continues onward, is going to begin to impact the ability of that fund to operate and kind of cripple it. And then eventually the district would have to fund it if it went to a complete negative. So it's the way I'm thinking about it is almost putting the Band-Aid on to heal the cut now and next year, rather than trying to suture it with stitches down the road. So
Is the fact that the state is giving the free lunches, the fact that we're doing the free lunches, pick up for virtual and as well as now everyone in school, is that having a positive or negative impact on the nutritional services budget?
So that would have a positive impact for us if more kids take advantage of that and eat. We would get the reimbursement from the federal and state for those, well, really mostly federal, for those lunches. So that will definitely be a help.
So we should encourage everybody to get their lunches, I guess, right?
We definitely should. And we saw much better numbers today at our launch day, feeding or giving out our meals to our hybrid and our virtual kids than we saw last week. A much better. And we're going to notify the parents a couple of more times this week that the free lunches are there for them. Gina and I talked today, and I said, Gina, that came out. We sent that out as soon as we could, but we sent it out on Friday. And a lot of parents get a lot of stuff on Friday from the schools. I know that for my son, the 11th grade update comes out on Friday afternoons. So we got that. We got the lunch thing. People kind of get on Friday afternoon. They're kind of like, oh, I'd look at this later. Maybe they never got back to it. It's just a rough time when all that stuff's coming out at parents. So we want to keep telling people that it's actually there for them, and hopefully it'll increase. We're really looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow at the high school, because that's our first day with kids back in the building after that went out, to see what that impact is at the high school level. So.
Well, I think that a lot of parents don't realize, they know it's available to their kids, but they don't want to take advantage if they're not in a poor financial situation. So maybe if we, could frame it in a way to let them know that they're encouraged, and I mean, I know we've kind of done that, but I still think that people still think that, it's still for people who need it. And so I think that's what, I don't think they realize it benefits the district. I didn't know till I just asked you.
Yeah, right. Yes, yes. That's all part of the, trying to get that message and that word out. And hopefully our principals can pick up that message and start including that in their, the information they send out also. So it's not just coming from, from Gina. So we need it to come from all, all avenues of the district, so that that information gets out there to kids or to families, so that the kids get their food. So
Is it, pardon me, is it available to all children in the district, or is it just like school age children?
no, it's all kids under 18 that we can offer food to. And if I say anything wrong, I know Gina will text me really quick, but it's all kids 18 or under in the district. And honestly, Ms. Dolan, they don't even have to be Penridge kids. We have kids and families that are from private schools, and they come and get the meals, and we provide them, and we submit for the reimbursement. And it's, yeah, they just have to be under 18. So
Thank you.
yeah.
It
And
seems like that would be so difficult to plan for, because the numbers wouldn't be like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you even know how many people would be coming in and doing that as far as the driving in part? So, I mean, I feel like they have their work cut out for them to try to guess how many people are going to come.
Yeah, it's very hard to plan. And really now, since this renewed, anyone can come on Mondays. We were just doing our hybrid and our virtual kids on Mondays. Now it's open to anyone can come on Mondays. And today we had someone who their kids go to one of the private schools, but it's okay. They're eligible with under the law. So we're going to feed those kids. They don't have to have ID. We don't have to take ID. We don't have to take names. We just counted the number of lunches, and we submit that. So it's a good program. It's a good program to feed kids. So. Okay. So the next slide I have for you is the capital projects fund balance. So I want to walk you through where we're at. We just had a pretty in-depth presentation from Reynolds about the potential spends and all the different projects. So our capital projects fund balance in last year's financial statements had a fund balance of $21.5 million. So our projects so money we spent in 1920, these were our projects that we did last summer, summer of 2019, about $5.4 million. We put about $2,000 of revenue back in for that fund share of interest. And we expended during 2021 so far about $1.2 million. So that's this summer's projects that we spent before I'm sorry, that's this summer's projects, yes, that we've spent so far. And we're very close to being done with those. And I have actually I have an estimate for the total. But what my estimate is, our balance will be about 14.7 million when we're done with all of the projects from the summer of 2020. When all that's said and done, all that's spent, we'll be at about $14.7 million. Just to remind you, as I did just a few minutes ago, we're not moving any money from the fiscal year end 1920, none of that surplus over into the capital projects fund like we normally do. So for this year, we're not replenishing a portion of what we spent. And that could also potentially happen next year, depending on how the 2021 fiscal year plays out. So that's our total available. Okay. And then the very last slide I have is just I was looking back and I had shown you a slide of unemployment. in Bucks County. And I think the last time I showed it to you was early in the summertime. So just give you an idea of where we're at here at the end of August. We're at about just under 25,000 continuous claims for unemployment in Bucks County. When the pandemic hit, or at the highest, it was over 61,000. So those numbers certainly have come down, but they're nowhere near the pre-COVID numbers that were just under $5,000. So, and that's all I have for you on that update.
Thank you, Mr. Dalbert.
You're welcome.
Okay. Looks like we're into the next item there. Mr. Dalbert.
Okay, so the next item is the discussion on the financing for the district. What we did, excuse me guys, I'm getting dry. What we did was we went out and we asked 3 financial advisor firms and 3 bond underwriter firms to take a look at our numbers, the district's outstanding debt, and put together a model of what they would recommend. And we asked them all to do it based on what the market was on August 21st. Then we asked them to turn that into, we gave them a week and asked them to turn that into us on August 28th. And then that following Monday, after Dr. Bowden and I had a chance to review it, we put 2 spreadsheets together, one as a summary for the financial advisors, one as a summary for the bond underwriters, and we sent that out to the finance committee to give it to them to take a look at. And then we've placed all that information on this agenda as well. We asked 3 financial advisor firms. We only received a response from 2. We did receive response from the 3 bond underwriter firms. And really where I found those firms was when we looked at the original presentations from PFM and RBC. In those presentations, they listed their competitors and their closest competitors as far as the amount of bond issues and so forth. I went to the next firms that did the most work, and those are the firms I reached out to and asked to look at our numbers. So that was just how I picked them. And then the final thing I have for you is 2 proposals from bond counsels. The company Dinsmore and Scholl is a company that apparently has done bond issues here in the district, or has been the bond counsel for a number of years. I believe he says 25 years. I also asked Mr. Miller to recommend a bond counsel attorney from his firm and provide a proposal, and he did that, and that information is also here for you. Excuse me. So I don't know how much of the information that you guys were able to take a look at and digest. If you have questions that you want to walk through, or how you want to attack this. If you want to talk about financial advisors firms first, or bond underwriters.
So as I was looking through, and I really appreciate you having all of the firms give their proposals for a specific date, because it takes out the variability of what the rates were that day and helps us to really compare apples to apples, one firm to another. What I was looking at is who's going to give us the best cost savings. And as I look through all of the firms, it appears that PNC would give us the greatest cost savings, but their proposal didn't break down the specifics as far as the call. Theirs was if you refinance the callable, the uncallable, and the variable debt, and you're comparing that to the others that were that we're only quoting the callable debt. And so I need to see a breakdown of those three numbers. And, I think Mr. Dalbert has reached back out to them to get that additional information. But in order to do the comparison to see, what those callable numbers with the funding coming back to us for the first 2 years, that gives us an apples to apples comparison between them to see which one is giving us the greatest cost savings. So for me, that piece of information will be important, but I want to go with whoever's giving us the best rate. And then, there's two other pieces of this. And, with the uncallable debt, you're paying a premium to refinance it now, or you're going to pay additional fees to do that process a second time in 2022. And so for me, I have to see what the premium is that we're paying now versus the extra fee, the duplicated fees of splitting that out and paying that in 2022. So for me, I feel like if those numbers are a wash or close to a wash, given today's market, it would make sense to refinance that piece now. But if it's substantially different to where even if there's an increase in the market, that it would be beneficial to wait, then that would be a potential option. But I feel like we have to compare those two numbers and, to figure that piece out. And then based on what I'm seeing as far as the variable debt, and Mr. Dalbert, if you can weigh in, make sure I'm looking at this right, but it appears that even if we refinance the variable rates and get a fixed rate, so it's locked in, so it's predictable, and now's the time to do that, we wouldn't see a loss. We may not see a major gain, and you never know what's going to happen with the market. But it seems like we'd at least get that guarantee that it's going to stay at that lower stable amount. Is that your perception of that as well?
Yeah, that's fair to say. It really, the variable rate debt that we budget that at a 4%. So where you're going to see the savings if we went forward and locked in the variable rate debt is in the budgeting process. We would start to budget it at what our actual payments would be, not at the 4%. So you would see the savings in our budgeting, not necessarily on what we're paying, because we're paying very low rates on that variable rate debt right now. It's 1.1s and so forth, which is very close to where the market is, now for that debt. So I think the last numbers that we saw estimated an actual savings of what we're actually paying now to what we would lock it in is around $10,000. But where we would actually that would be actual pay to actual savings. But compared to what we budgeted, it's that's where the $400,000 savings comes.
So do you know how much of if you're comparing actual to actual, I don't remember what that was. When you're comparing the actual to the actual for switching from the variable rate to the fixed rate, do we have how much that would end up costing us then to switch? Because the reality is, yeah, we would lose if from what you're saying, right? It would drop in our budget, but then obviously if the rates stayed where they were, and you're saving money just in the budget and you get more revenue, you have less expenses than you expected, that just keeps year after year falling into our capital fund.
Yeah,
so it's not like we lose it, right? We just end up with more money in capital to fund some of these projects. So do you know what that actual comparison is? Is it?
No, I don't. And what you're saying is that if the market stays where it's at right now for the next 3 years, the next 3 fiscal years, and that's when our variable rate debt ends, after 3 years. If the market stays where it's at, it makes no sense for us to lock it in, because we would pay, the cost of bond underwriting and so forth to float bonds to replace it when we really don't need to, because the interest rate is as low as it's going to get than what we're paying right now. where it is it's a risk reward situation. So if the market goes up in the next 3 years, then we would have been smarter locking it in, and paying the one, keeping it at 1%. So that's the whole risk reward here, and that's the whole crystal ball. What's going to happen in the next 3 years? 3 years isn't a considerably long time in the market, in the bond market, I don't think, but anything can happen in that 3-year period. That debt is with the payments we made this fiscal year, that debt is it's going to be under $10 million at the end of this fiscal year. So the variable rate chunk is much smaller than the larger $27 million of debt that's outstanding that is callable to be refinanced. So it's all in. If we refinance them now and the market stays where it's at, we've probably lost in the end game, because we've paid money to refinance when the costs were going to stay the same. But we don't know that. We don't know that. It's how much risk do you want to take as a board, or do you just want to take it off the table and say, we want to lock this in now as a board. We don't want to take the risk anymore. We want to know what we're going to pay. We want to budget for it, and we want to just move forward.
I think it would be helpful to know how substantial the increase would have to be to break even. You know what I mean? Like, how substantial would the rate increase over the next 3 years? Because it is such a short term, right? If we were talking about a 10-year term left, that would be different than the fact that we have such a short period of time left, and so the amount of money that it costs to do this, I don't know if it'll pan out, but to know how much of an increase we would have to see to break even over the next 3 years. And is there some kind of cap? Isn't there a cap for how much it can increase each year?
No,
there's not. Okay.
No, it's a free market. So
is that a number that we can get? What our break even, how much the rates would have to increase over the next 3 years for us to break even?
I can ask.
That way we have an idea of how, you know what I mean? Because then we have an idea of how reasonable or unreasonable it is that the rates would get to that point. I think it would just give a better gauge. And does anyone else want to weigh in here?
Yeah, I just had a question going back to one of the previous meetings where we discussed this. There was a conversation about timing, and what I think it was Bill, you had been talking about, we needed to do this by a certain time. You had felt, I don't know if you remember that, or if you can refresh my memory of what that concern was and if it still exists.
I don't think it was me specifically, Mrs. Cullen, that brought that up, but I thought that we had, I do remember there being a discussion about timing, and that this is something we wanted to try to get done sooner rather than later, because we can take advantage of the low rates. And, based on the discussion here tonight, it sounds like our variable debt is going to be a wash. Right. And we can't predict what's going to happen over the next 3 years. That's going to be, hard to do. And that's the smaller piece of our debt. So, I'm sitting on the fence here wondering if it pays us to just leave the variable alone and ride it out and take the larger chunk of the debt and proceed with refinancing that based on the lower rates where we are right now. Just my 2 cents.
That's kind of where I was leaning to, you know, pending those numbers, but I think, you know, it is just it's just such a short period of time and
Right.
it is a small portion. And then, you know, I would even be comfortable as far as the callable piece. I would be comfortable saying if we get that number, you know, if Mr. Dalbert's able to get the number back from them, for the breakdown from them of, and that callable debt number is lower than what the other two companies had, that would be the one that I'd be, because to Mrs. Cullen's point about moving forward, I think it's important that we vote and move forward with this at the next board meeting. So if Mr. Dahlberg can get that breakdown and that ends up being the most cost-effective option with PNC, then I would suggest we go forward with whoever ends up being the most cost-effective when we get that breakdown and are able to compare the apples to apples numbers. And then the only other piece, you know, and obviously other people have to weigh in on that variable piece that Mr. Kraus just weighed in on, but then the last piece we would have to discuss is whether or not to include, actually two more pieces. One is whether or not to do the uncallable debt. And I think Mr. Dahlberg can send us that information so that we can make this decision at the board meeting and to be able to compare those numbers. And then the last piece would be which firm to move forward with, as far as, you know, which attorney deals with, you know, does this for us. Is there anyone else who wants to weigh in?
Mr. Dahlberg, is that a fair time frame? If we're able to gather some of the answers from the companies, send them out later this week, give some time for some thought about a recommendation going into Monday to put something on the board agenda for Monday night. You think that's workable as long as we hear back from the companies in a timely manner?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Can you speak briefly to the two bond counsel recommendations, since those are new to us this evening?
Yeah, the two recommendations were from Dinsmore and Shaw. That is Christopher Brewer. He's the gentleman who has told me that he's done the bond issues here for quite some time. His cost that he's quoting is $22,500 for the bond issue, which is the same as what he charged in 2015. The second one is a letter I received from Mike from Eckert and Siemens. Bond counsel, gentleman by the name of Jonathan Cox. And the cost that Mike sent was $27,500 for a bond issue. So those were the two letters I received. And those letters are there for you to read and take a look at.
Right. And Mr. Dalbert, I think as I'm reading through the proposal from Eckert Siemens, it looks like they've structured it in two different cost points, one for the callable and variable, and the other for the non-callable debt. Right?
Yeah, it looks like
17.5. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like if we split them out, Eckert Siemens is less because they'll only do 17.5 for the closing. It looks like whereas however we're doing both the callable and the non-callable, their price is higher than the other.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dalbert. And And Mr. Gerhart.
So I think
Okay, so-
the other thing that the board needs to consider is whether they're going to use a financial advisor and a bond underwriter firm, or a financial advisor firm and then do a bond auction, or what otherwise known as a competitive bond sale, or not have a financial advisor, and just have a bond underwriter and do the bond issue just with the bond underwriter. The other option is to have a financial advisor and have a bond underwriter work together and do a negotiated sale. So there are a number of different questions to think about your strategy for how you want to sell your bonds and who you want representing you. Because I jump you back to just the single fact that a bond financial advisor works for you, has a fiduciary responsibility to you as a school board, whereas a bond underwriter has no fiduciary responsibility to you. And their responsibility is to basically to themselves, and to make as much money as they possibly can for themselves. Bond underwriters work on commission, financial advisors work on salary. They don't do a bond issue with them, they don't get paid, or they get paid their salary, but it doesn't matter. It's not like their main goal is to sell you something, whereas a bond underwriter, their main goal is to sell you something.
So when I'm looking at the proposals, the bond underwriters came in with the best prices, and for me, I'm looking at that, and I'm not willing to pay a premium to have a financial advisor. And I feel like having an attorney who's going to review all of the documents, the attorney is going to be making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And we don't really have any repercussions against a financial advisor if they, if we think they should have given us a better rate than they actually gave us. There's no real, there's no real way to suggest that. So all we can really go by is the quotes that they gave us, and I'm just looking at the fact that you're cutting out the middleman, so you're saving some money that way. I think it would have made sense if we had a more complicated situation and we're trying to do a bunch of different things and get all different recommendations, but I think this is just a pretty straightforward situation where we just need to get the best price. That's my perspective. As I'm looking at, as I was looking at the proposals, for the bond, for who our attorney is going to be. So the one who's been working for the district, or who did the district's stuff before, is a lower price. I think what the one Mike recommended is broken up. If you're going to do multiple transactions, it would be $17,500 per transaction, as opposed to if you bid it out once. And so we would be bidding it out once, so we would be the $27,500. If I remember, I don't have the screen. And so it would really be higher if we split it out, because let's say we did two, then you'd be looking at $35,000. So the reality is that the one who's been working for the district the longest is going to save us is going to save us money. They were $5,000 cheaper. So
maybe I'm sorry, Megan. Maybe I'm understanding the letter wrong, but when I was reading through it, it looks like, I thought it specifically said if you elect to separate the sale of the callable and the non-callable, then it would be $17,500 each of those if we were going to pursue both of them. But if we're only going to pursue the callable, then it would only be 17.5. Maybe I'm misunderstanding there. Whereas the other the other law firm that had been doing it just set a flat rate of 22 something, whatever the exact number is.
It says our fee to provide the legal services customarily provided by both the solicitor and bond counsel for the above described refunding transactions would be $27,500 if structured as a single public offering and closing.
Right.
If the district elects to separate the sale and closing dates for the callable versus non-callable debt based on market conditions or other considerations, our fee would be $17,500 per closing. So I think if you separated them out, they're saying it would be 35,000.
Right.
If you put them all together, it would be 27,500. But both of those numbers then.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I got you. And then
So
I guess it's not. I guess I was missing.
I read it the first time, I thought what you thought too.
I guess,
and then
yeah, I was missing if we separate it out, would it only be 17.5 for the one? But after reading that, it's not, maybe they're not they're probably not offering that. Yeah.
When I first read through, I was thinking that. I was thinking, oh, well, if we just do this, then it'll be cheaper.
Yeah. I don't know if it's me, but Megan's frozen for me.
Yep,
Megan's
frozen. So I'm not, Mr. Gerhardt, to your point, in the letter from Dinsmore, it clearly says, they'll do I offer to serve as bond counsel on your proposed financing for a flat fee of $22,500, same as I charged in 2015. He doesn't specifically say that that's a single, a single sale, right? And a single closing.
At the end of that same paragraph, Mr. Kraus, it says this fee would cover your first transaction and would be discounted for subsequent issues in the series. So he does say that it would be cheaper for the second one, but does not say what cheaper means.
Right.
So we are comparing 27.5 to 22.5 for the first one.
Yeah.
Whether the first one is big or little, I think that's the price for the first one. And then the second one, we'd have to negotiate with Mr. Brewer and to see what his price is if we decide to split them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bolton. I think we've lost Mrs. Banis Clemens momentarily.
So again, we'll provide additional information later this week so that the board can consider a recommendation for Monday night if that's appropriate at the board meeting. Okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Mr. Dauber, why don't you go ahead and move on to the other agenda items while Ms. Banis Clemens is getting back on the call.
Okay, the next items are contracts. We have 3 for CADES. They're all self-contained special education programs for the students identified there. The first one is $304.42 per day. The second one is $365.50 per day. And the third is $211.69 per day. And that third one is for a one-to-one aid that's needed for one of those students. So they're all special education needs.
Sorry, my internet cut out and I lost you guys.
No problem. We're looking at the contracts now.
Okay, so where did we leave the attorney piece?
We left it that we're going to gather additional information. We clarified that the attorneys that for one transaction, the look at the Dinsmore and Scholl is $5,000 less expensive than the Eckert Siemens for one. There's discounts on both of them for multiple, so we would have to negotiate that if we decide we're going to do multiple. And we're going to gather some additional information that was asked for tonight and send that out to the board by the end of the week so that perhaps we can have a recommendation for Monday if that's appropriate.
Okay, so no decision was made about the attorney, just clarifying the numbers.
Right, because if we decide to go 2, we would have to get the number from the first company to make sure
Got
we do that. If we go 1, I think we have our numbers.
Right.
and we can move
Okay,
forward.
thank you.
Yep.
And if we did a refinancing of callable bond issue and the non-callable at the taxable bond issue, they would have to be 2 different bond issues. Letter D is the pediatric therapeutic services for the student identified there, $70.49 per hour for the services needed for that student. Next one is the Bucks County Community College. This is the contract for the our students to be able to park at the campus this year since they're closed. What the cost of that contract is $4,500 for the first semester.
And that's being funded by the students' parking passes. The students
Yes.
pay for parking spots.
And the last contract is Intellectual Works. This is a consultant to oversee development of the diversity, equity, and inclusion sustainability program for the year. And the total cost is $7,950. And all those contracts have been reviewed by Mr. Miller.
The intercultural contract is a continuation of our work with Mrs. Laura Lomax, who is one of the 3 consultants that we have working with us on diversity issues. So as you review that proposal, this would overview work with the DEI team, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team, for their work over a 3-month period, as well as helping us to design some guide work moving forward for that team, as well as planning a community forum. So we've made the commitment that as soon as we're able to gather together with any numbers for us to offer a community forum on this topic, and Ms. Lomax would be a wonderful facilitator for that and would help us do that. So that's what this work is, a contract to continue that work with Ms. Lomax this year.
And we're using our title funds to pay for that project or for that contract. And then moving on, the last item we have tonight under number 12 is a new request for a student activity account. Account is called Build On. And they work to raise money to provide schooling, to build schools in some of the poorest countries in the world. So that's the goal of that club, is to continue that support to help fund education and build schools in economically distressed countries. So, and Dr. Cashman has signed off with his approval on starting that club.
Okay.
So, okay.
Good. Mrs. Baines Clemens.
I just want to, first of all, I think it's really a great opportunity to give back and a neat experience for kids. My only question is what do we have in place to ensure their safety in those areas if they're going on that trip?
But wouldn't we normally cover that on the activities committee when that came before us to take that trip?
Yes, that's correct. At this point, we're just creating an account for them. Their goal initially is to do some fundraisers in terms of raising funds to send, with the long-term goals of around the possibility of that trip, which then would obviously be covered through an outside third party and would come to the activities, and we would have all that kind of conversation that we have about overseas travel.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dalbert. I think you've had quite a full agenda tonight, and it said quite a lot. He's
You're
frozen.
welcome.
There you are.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. So the last item I have here is the next facilities committee meeting is scheduled for October 13th, 2020. And moving into public comment, Dr. Bolton, did we receive any public comment?
I'm refreshing Mr. Kraus, but no, there has been no public comment were submitted since 6 p.m.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining. And to board members, we have executive session scheduled for after this. So please log on to the separate login.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
We'll see you in
Thank you.
about 5
All right.
minutes,
Thank you.
board members.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.